You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey guys, welcome to another Friday episode of Cards to the Moon. We got the original crew back for episode number 63. I'm Clark of 5 Card Guys, and co-hosting with me is Hyung of Integrity Sports Cards, and John, who is Trade You at Recess on Instagram. You know, we might have to think about having Will as a regular host after his stellar performance on the last podcast episode, eh?
Will was born to be,
for
speaking.
Sure.
Agreed.
For sure.
100%. Always
well,
welcome,
we'll work
Will.
on it.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, so off the top for this episode, just wanted to get your quick thoughts on the recent news that Fanatics Collectibles has a new CEO to oversee its collectibles division, which includes, of course, the Topps brand, Zero Cool, and Candy Digital. So the new CEO's name is Mike Mahan. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. And what we know about him from the news release is that he's a television executive who previously ran Dick Clark Productions as CEO, producing big shows like the Golden Globe Awards and Billboard Music Awards. Yeah, big time shows. And long story short, he's credited for driving large viewership to those programs. And now he's tasked to essentially grow the Fanatics brand. And apparently he's a collector too. That's what it says, right? So what do you guys think? Especially with a lot of people thinking that, Josh Luber, who many people believed in, was going to run the show. But I guess he won't be the only one.
So what's Mr. Luber up to?
He's still CVO, Chief Visionary Officer, whatever that means. But yeah, he's still on board.
So I'm assuming they hired, who's it? Mahan?
Mike Mahan.
Mahan. Yeah. I guess for his expertise in just bringing viewership. I guess I don't know how I feel about it, because it was kind of, I guess, exciting that someone like Luber would enter the market, and then you have someone that loves the collectible space, especially with StockX and that whole deal. And now you have a new guy all of a sudden where the markets are kind of down, and then it's just, is this news? But then I look at Fanatics' number, and it's ridiculous how much business they do, right? Even in this time, I guess you won't see the economic hit that they're probably gonna face, but from to this day, it's been a hot brand in the collectibles market, and also like apparel licensing, that right. Whole deal, right? So it's interesting to see, I guess, another new face. To me, it's not really it doesn't motivate me to do anything special. Is for me, is it news? Really? What are we gonna see from it? Yeah.
So do you guys have any insight whether this was kind of the plan to begin with, like a chief visionary officer and then a CEO on top, or is this a more recent development?
I have no idea.
This has to be more recent. And I think for the most part, hobbyists, they're another guy coming in we don't and that's that, right? So I think that's where a lot of people sit too. But I mean, if you're interested in the NFT space, which is the other half, they'd be excited for stuff like this, where it's okay, let's see where this is gonna kind of go, right?
Yeah. And this is exactly what we were talking about when Josh Luber came in, right? We're he's a collector, hardcore collector, it's in good hands. But who knows, they could bring an outsider in, and this is exactly what people are worried about, right? But yeah, it's interesting to see this news develop.
Yeah.
John, any thoughts?
To be honest, I feel fairly positive about it. Luber, there's no question, man. Luber's image or position in the hobby, he is taking a beating ever since he jumped on board with those breakers. And there's just so many negative comments about him in general, and just his, like we said before, maybe Luber saw the opportunity in the long term is a lot greater than the negative publicity in the short term. So he has a greater vision. But in terms of this new guy coming in, I think Luber is obviously the expert on more of the ground level in terms of, urban, street, whatever's happening kind of like on day to day and what's happening in general culture. And then the CEO looks like he's coming in to really run the business, because let's not forget Fanatics and Topps are multi-million-dollar enterprises, right? So you can't just, no offense to Luber, but you can't have sort of like this green CEO run this giant company, right?
Sure.
So I think business-wise it makes sense. And if he really is sort of like this expert in the television space, it could really be exciting, man. We could be seeing sports cards, Topps, Netflix shows. I don't know, something like that.
Right.
It could be well beyond just, I think people are really thinking, oh, they're going to take breaking to a new level. But I honestly think it's probably a lot beyond that, because breaking has had its moment, and I think it's losing a lot of steam, especially with a lot of the negativity that's been happening, not just with those backyard break guys, but just in general. I think there's a lot of other companies that have been getting caught up in some of the negative publicity. So breaking, I think, had its moments, but in terms of new, just like new shows, new ideas for the sports card space, I think, for me, I'm pretty excited about that. So I think this is, business wise, I would assume this is a good move, but for the hobby, for the people, we'll see.
I also think it's going to change, like John said, like breaking, right? Like, because that was one of their kind of like goals, is to like redistribute to breakers and change the kind of, I guess, the essence of breaking and distribution, who gets the reselling, the secondary market and all. So I believe like we need a little bit of that cleaned up. So I think that's what they're going to probably bring in a lot more, because they have the distribution to Topps, right? So it's like, who gets distribution now? Do just local card stores get accounts, or are they looking for more the influential path of, other I guess influencers in the market,
Sure.
right? So I know they're trying to change the infrastructure just because now they have the Topps brand, right? So
yeah,
that's true.
And
it's interesting.
And they'll have the luxury of having like Fanatics exclusive breaking only products, right? Like a Topps Chrome, whatever, right? So that'll help ignite some of the breaking activity when they come out with it.
Yeah, it's interesting you guys bring that up, because I was going to bring that up as a second point, that in that news release where they announced the new CEO, they also mentioned as background information, I'm going to quote the release here: "The business, i.e. Fanatics Collectibles, will continue to serve fans, collectors, and partners across all channels, direct to consumer, hobby shops, and retailers, while opening doors to new businesses for Fanatics Collectibles, such as breaking," which is what we're talking about here,
right,
secondary marketplaces, and more. So yeah, it looks like you guys are hitting the nail on the head. It looks like they're going to do something with breaking, clean it up. Like, if Fanatics is going to put their brand name behind it, they better do it in a legit way, where people can trust that brand name. And the other part of it is secondary marketplaces. That's kind of interesting to me too. Like, are they looking to compete more directly with the eBays and the PWCCs? You know what I mean? So that'll be an interesting play too, I think.
Maybe kind of like a break to market right after, right? So it's you break and it goes directly into vault, and you can start selling into other people's vaults.
True. I could see that for sure.
Right.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Mahan runs the business. But I generally see this, like you, John, as more positive, knowing that they're actually putting more human resources to really get Fanatics Collectibles off the ground. And it is I can't remember what the numbers are in terms of the value and how much they want to appreciate it towards, but it's a pretty big number. Right. So yeah, they're going to need more than just a CVO, whatever that is, heading the ship.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Let's move on then to our discussion topic today, which is revisiting the question of who are you targeting in the card market now? especially now that the NBA season is officially over. Congrats to Dub Nation. And with the NFL also in the offseason and the NHL soon to be in the offseason, historically cards in the offseason tend to take a dip, but now compound that with the state of the economy. I'm wondering if there's any players you're eager to pounce on if prices dip real low.
This one's tough because, like you said, it's you're dealing with a lot of factors like the state of the economy. One being one of the biggest, and you just kind of say, okay, when is the time? Right? It's a matter of when do I buy in, because you don't want to necessarily jump in too early and then sure. you could have bought two in the meantime, right? Like right. 6 months later. But like I think there's like we talked about in earlier pods, like guys like LeBron James. I think there when there's a buying opportunity there, I think it's good to go a little more long term on kind of like real established GOAT type players. The Trouts, the Currys, the LeBrons, but obviously timing that's going to be very, very difficult, right? So I think me personally, I'm waiting a bit. Like before we time the market with seasons, right? And I might do that with dabble into it with guys that I think is really cheap that's gonna have like a big upcoming season, for instance. But in terms of like a bigger play, I don't think I'm gonna go necessarily heavier on the younger stars, because we see kind of the market correcting in general, not only with pricing but like even like the hype of the chase, of the young stars versus kind of like, okay, where's the better investment overall? And for me, it would be guys like LeBron James, for instance. Like, I know he gets a lot of hate, but he's going to surpass, a milestone, huge milestone for the all-time, scoring leader. So it's like stuff like that in the long term, in the macro lens, those are huge accomplishments that, Hall of Famers, GOAT type players accomplish, right? And that was the original reason why we got into like, or like say card investing or card collecting in the future. When we were kids, we were saying, oh, this card is going to be worth like millions of dollars, because you would think that he would like a Ken Griffey Jr. would be a Hall of Famer or one of the greatest to ever play the game, right, and stuff like that, right? So I feel like that's going to be more my play, kind of dipping into and not necessarily time in the market, because I think a lot of people are going to maybe think that there's going to be a hype, but the state of the economy is so terrible that it's going to still be in play, right? So it's not necessarily going to be like old times where, okay, load up on, football and basketball because it's the off season, because we could see those prices continually kind of, retract and correct into its true value, true market value, sure, right? So
even as the season begins, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For myself, I think I'm with Hyung, and this is it's not a shocking answer. I think everybody kind of is on the same path when you have a bear market and when you have external factors such as what's happening in the world. Everybody's kind of at a pause in terms of expenditures and where you spend your money on. And I think everybody is maybe somewhat nervous, maybe anxious. Cautious is probably the best word for most people. So sports cards would kind of come secondary to a lot of other things like real life. So I think most people are generally in a hold pattern. For myself, I mean, in terms of my actual strategy, feel like I'm beating a bit of a dead horse, but I got the Soto that I wanted, and next up is Luka. So at some point, I'll look to make a move, but probably a bit later, maybe towards the end of the summer. September is what I'm thinking. And then other than that, to be honest, I'm more on the path of our Will, who was on last week. He has been on a run of really attacking personal collection, kind of enjoying the hobby for what it is. And I think that's what I plan to do as well. Like, we're a collector first and foremost, and we're still enjoying the hobby, whether it's a down, like a really crashing market, or if it's an amazing up market. And I think the last couple of, the last 24 months, because the money in the hobby has been so great, even as a hobbyist, you can't help but buy cards that you think will make money for you to help you collecting or whatever you want to buy in the long term. So you kind of fall into the trap of purchasing investments more so than PC or whatever, right? So I think now a lot of that has come down, and a lot of that has, a lot of people taking L's, and you don't want to really spend a lot of money on investments. I think for me, if you were to see me make some purchases in the next month, 2 months, 3 months, most likely you're going to see me get something like for the PC, like Chloe Kim, something really random and obscure that I just want for myself. You'll probably see me do something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to pressure you guys to choose a couple of guys, but it looks like you're sitting on your hands.
I said LeBron. I think he's a buy.
Okay.
Just when. Yeah, maybe 5,000, 4,000 for a Topps Chrome.
Honestly, I think, to be honest, everything is a buy, but it's really a matter of how much lower is it going to get, and then time to make a move. Right?
Buy it on the way up.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a better strategy. I'm gonna. You know what? In essence, I agree with you, but just to make this podcast episode a little bit more interesting, I'm gonna suggest a couple of guys.
Where's Will when we need him?
Yeah. Will, he's actually buying stuff. Where the three of us are a little more cautious than Will. You know what? It's funny, but we say this all the time. GOAT players, and actually, we're gonna do an episode, probably the next one, where we'll talk about chasing GOATs. That might be a good segment to dive into a bit deeper in our regular episode and see what that number is. You said 5,000, Hyung. Yeah, we'll see. Where it is now, but that'll be a good segment for next Tuesday. But for now, just in general, like I like to target guys if I'm buying like that I can see really high volatility on. I know that's what you like to do as well, Hyung, but like guys like Jamorant, okay? Like when the Grizzlies were in the playoffs, like it was spiking. And of course that was the time not to buy. And now we're kind of in the off season. Like, he's been out of the news cycle for the past month. Wait for another month or two. Wait for the news to just kind of die down and maybe hopefully see those prices go even further down. I might take the risk on getting like a nice Jamorant Silver Prism, 2019 Prism. And I'm just looking at the card ladder chart now, and the last one just sold for under 1,000, so $998.
Very decent.
Yeah, and I think it could go down further, right?
Yeah,
like wait
sure.
till later in the summer,
For
and like how about if it hits 600-700? Would you be tempted to pick one up then?
I think so. Yeah,
I think I would too, to be honest.
I just sold the Anthony Edwards Silver for $820 US. So it's like,
oh man, yeah.
Ja at that price is not a bad price.
Right.
That's another guy. I love Anthony Edwards. So like if he drops down to even further down to 6, 7, even 5, I could see that happening.
Right.
I gotta scoop him up, and we talked about Jamorant in particular before because of that year's Prism set, the
short printed.
Short print, yeah, exactly. I was looking for that word. Like I look at the pop count, it's 1358 compared to Luka Trazier, where it's over 2,000 for PSA 10s, right? So that card has that going for it, and so yeah, just kind of looking for those interesting plays. Like if I'm gonna make a play, I don't know, maybe I'm more hesitant to. We say go for the GOAT players, but it's got to be really good value.
Yeah, what I mean? I think that's long term. You go for GOAT players, and then if you're playing the flip game and you're timing the market, where it's like, you know what, I'm gonna gamble on Trae Young this year or Ja Morant, or even like some football guys like I think Herb and like Burrows, like they're overpriced, so they have to absolutely play like crazy for them to sustain those prices, right? So it's like you find a guy that you think is way cheap. He's so cheap that it's an auto buy because it's the cost of grading, and he has a great like season. I could see you flipping in that sense, right? Not necessarily that like the GOAT type players in that scenario, right? Yeah,
no, that's a really good point for sure. So yeah, Jamorant, Anthony Edwards for me on my watch list already.
Nice.
and even Giannis, I think I don't know, man.
You're sticking with the silvers, eh?
I just, I look at the colors too, but I mean, the values are
so
still
expensive.
up there for colors.
Yeah, they're dropping.
Like of course, if the colors go down as well, like that's my first preference. But now
would you rather staying with like the Prism brand and not going like select color, like numbered? Because that was our previous episodes where we're like, we rather the select colors, and then the other flip side was no, the liquidity, right?
Yeah,
So I think I would stick with Prism.
I've honestly did a 180 on that. Like I was all about select, colored, numbered, and then we had that episode where we talked about how Select is screwing things up by overprinting the parallels, and then on top of that, honestly, Prism prices are fairly attractive now. Like before, it's like, oh, I don't want to pay that much for Prism, and that was like the higher end cards that people were going for. But now that it's within our budget, why not go for the superior set?
I will say that we're gonna look back, and 2018 and 2019 is going to be an enormous set. Like, just there's so much talent coming out of those 2 years, and it's such a great, like, I personally love 2019, like Prism. I think it's like, especially a silver, like a Ja silver, it's more like boxy, and I like 2019 better than 2018 personally in Prism. But yeah, I think we're gonna look back and it's gonna be like, damn, that was a good time. We should have ripped more, or we should have, bought more. Just kind of like the 86 Fleer set. Like it's iconic. So many rookies, and over the years, we're going to look back and we're like, damn, Luka, Ja, Zion, Hero, SGA. Like there's so many guys that just come out of those two sets. So, no, I like your buys, especially the Ja, just because it's, short printed, and cards are beautiful. It's a silver Prism for that year. Yeah.
Love it. Mm-hmm. Speaking of the 2019 Prism, you sent us a link just before this episode, Hyung. Zion Williamson, you buying?
Freaking, he's absolutely ripped again. This guy, I swear, I don't know what to believe. Like one day I see him, he's 325 pounds. The next day he's like shredded. He looks like a ninja, Like, I don't know if you guys seen his post or follow Zion Williamson on Instagram, but see his latest post and just scroll one over. He's in the gym. He looks like he's in very, very good shape.
Are you sure that wasn't recorded earlier?
That might have been. You never know. This could have been 2020 Zion, coming out of the pandemic.
Johnny, you had an interesting idea of what Zion's like.
No, I was saying offline that Zion, it reminds me of Harden. Whenever these guys are to be marketed either for a trade or for a comeback, they're always in the gym looking ripped, looking fit. Like Harden looks like he loses 100 pounds. Then he gets traded. Zion comes back, and all of a sudden these guys have like 300-pound dad bods again out of nowhere. Like, what the heck?
Yeah.
It's fraudulent, man. Don't believe it.
You know what? I don't know if I mentioned in a previous episode, but I did sell my Zion Select Light Blue number to $299.
Should have waited a week.
Card Expo. But now that I sold it, of course it's going to, Zion's going to rip in this coming season. But we'll see. All right, it'll be interesting to see how the market plays out. Something we'll always keep tabs on. And you know what? Hopefully we'll be able to report back with some cards we scooped up in a future episode this summer. All right, that wraps up this episode. We'll keep it short for this Friday. But as always, thanks for all our listeners and subscribers. We really appreciate your support. And if you haven't already and you enjoyed this episode, if you could give us 5 stars, that would be awesome. And we'll see you on Tuesday for our next full episode. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.